Hi there, this is Mckenna Canty. I'm a senior at UMass Amherst and an intern with the New Music Alliance, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping the careers of Western New England artists who write original music. You're about to hear my interview with acclaimed singer-songwriter Ray Mason of the Ray Mason Band and the Lonesome Brothers. Hello, is this Ray?
Yes, it's Mckenna.
It is, yes. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me today.
Many of our listeners on the Radio Music Hour would have just heard your song Up But So Loose from the Ray Mason Band's album, When the Clown's Work Is Over. Could you tell me about the process of maybe writing that song and that album, which was, I think, back in 2000?
It's funny that song came about. I think it came about because I saw some kind of ad on television or something that someone wouldn't leave home without it, and I don't remember what it was. It could have been like an American Express card, which I don't have any of those. But anyway, for some reason, words sometimes will just stick in your head from anywhere, It could be something somebody said out of the blue to you, a friend, or anyone just in passing or whatever, and certain words will stick in your head, and then I have many pads and stuff, and I just write titles down. I start with titles. So I'll have half a pad full of song titles, which, and some of them turn into songs eventually, because to me, if you have a title that you like, then you have the song. So I wrote Up But So Loose on the top, and eventually it just, I won't leave home without it. And I said, oh yeah, I heard that. This is going to turn into something. And then, of course, my band recorded it, the guys have been together in my band for a long time, which I'm very fortunate that they are. And Stephen Bissonier and Frank Marsh and Tom Shea and the great Jim Weeks produced the album and stuff. And so who's produced a lot of my stuff. And so that's how that song kind of came about, just one of those kind of like accidents that happen that fill up pads that I have of song titles, and I go back and I look at titles and I just take them from there, and a lot of them turn into songs later on, they kind of, I would say, write themselves, but that's not totally true, because sometimes it's grueling working on one line that you want to change, and you change it a couple words here and there, so you think it's just where you want it to be, and then you go for it there.
Mm-hmm. That's a cool way to start with inspiration. I like that. Yeah. Does your music or writing style differ at all when you're making music with the Ray Mason Band or the Lonesome Brothers, or versus your own solo work?
Many years ago it used to. I think when the Lonesomes, we started probably 36 years this year. In my band, way about 1980, the first incarnation of the band, and I think back then that I kind of separated them more as far as certain songs would fit a certain band, and the Lonesome Brothers would be more even rootsier, maybe with more of a country kind of slant in some things. But those days are over. I mean, I just write whatever I write, and then kind of divvy up songs, and I find that I don't think about that anymore. It's just kind of okay. These 6 songs are going to be for the Lonesome Brothers' next album. Jim Armenti will write the other 6, and we do half and half, and then it's just something you work on every day. I find that already this morning I've run over a bunch of songs when I get up early this morning and just sit in the back room with a guitar and play really soft and do it, or I'll be up at 1 a.m. playing songs. Very low key. My wife is asleep in the next room, so I'm very low key. But I'm kind of enjoying playing like that, and enjoying that because it's very quiet then, and you just kind of, do it at your own pace, and all of a sudden you look and go, geez, it's 1:45 in the morning. I think I'm done for the night.
I think the late night sometime is just it's a really creative hour, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think being musicians in general, too, I mean, just the because of what you do, I started playing out in the late 60s, and I was up late all the time doing these gigs, and all these years I've been used to that kind of schedule, but I find that the older I got, that some of the gigs got earlier, and I kind of enjoyed that, because before you'd be playing a gig somewhere in New York or Boston, wherever, and you'd get home at 4 or 5 in the morning, and then you get used to things like that, and then as you get older, though, now it's someone says, oh yeah, the gig's 7 to 9. I go, yeah, that's great. I love that.
That goes well into my next question, because I know earlier in your career you'd play around like 100 plus or 200 plus shows a year. Was that hard to keep up?
Way back, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, was that hard to keep up so constantly?
Oh, no, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was younger then, and I it was just fun to do all the time. You just kind of would get used to it every week. I mean, and if you had too many blank spaces, it felt weird. You just kind of like, oh, geez, this next week there's only like 2 gigs next week. As used to having 4 or 5. But yeah, back then it was just like it's what you did, and you just played every week as much as you could. I mean, people would the band you were in and would just go. It's like starting in my late teens and into my 20s and 30s. I mean, when I was really young, I thought somebody 30 was really old. I thought, oh man, how old are you? 30? Oh, I think, oh wow, that's like so old. Then you get to be 30 to go, wow, still feel like a teenager still. I think you do what you do, and it comes with what you do. I mean, you're a musician, and you go out there and you play every week if you can. I mean, if the opportunities arise, you just you say yes more than no.
Yeah, makes sense. Do you have any shows or tours that you really find really memorable or really exciting? I know you were able to open for some really well-known bands and artists too.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, there's been tons of them. Yeah, stuff, fun gigs down in New York City and stuff. I remember opening at the Lone Star for NRBQ, one of my all-time favorite bands, big influence on me, and doing a bunch of shows opening for them, in Cambridge, Mass, and up in Portland, Maine at the State Theater, down at Toad's Place in New Haven. Whole bunch opening for them at one point, and then just over the years, all these other people that I admire a lot, like the late great Warren Zevon and Rick Danko from the band, and different people, and just even gigs like there used to be a place, Katina's on Route 9 in Hadley, opening there for like Joan Jett and her band.
Oh, cool.
And me and my Silvertone. And then, so wherever, play the CBGBs in New York City, the Rat in Boston, different places, and traveled farther, I remember playing the Raji's on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. Back in the traveling days more, where I'd sit at the kitchen table with a big atlas and try to book some gigs for my band to get in the van and go, and that made sense to do, and that weren't like so far away from each other, mileage-wise. But then you would just get in the van and go, pick everybody up, and away you'd go for a week or two. And didn't do that a real lot, but enough. And I don't change what I do. I never change what I do. I just get up there and do my songs and play my Silvertone. And if people are into hearing that, fine. If they don't want to hear it, I just keep playing. not against it, Not like people are screaming for me to get out of there. But
That's awesome.
You're listening to an interview with musician Ray Mason of the Ray Mason Band and the Lonesome Brothers.
So you started in your first band in the 60s, and then I know your first album came out on only cassettes, and I'm sure a lot has changed in the music industry, especially now with everything's being shared digitally and all that. What's it been like, kind of just witnessing that whole evolution?
Yeah, well, things have changed. I mean, of course, I grew up in the days of vinyl, of course, and vinyl is extremely popular, which is nice to see. So where I'm sitting right now talking to you is in the back room. There's a computer here, and I'm just surrounded by records. There's albums everywhere, and there's 45s, all from the late 50s and 60s, all in a row on one side. Just albums everywhere, just shelves of them. They're all over the floor. There's enough room for me to sit here in the chair and talk with you. And like in 1980, I believe I put out 6 cassette albums, and eventually I picked my favorites off of those and put them out on a CD called Square Crazy. That's one of my CDs, and so yeah, a lot of those were recorded in my room on a 4-track tape deck, which doesn't work anymore, and I don't even remember how to use it. Yeah, but so I would do that and put those out and mail them out to people. Like I hand crayon the covers, and I'd run them off one at a time at real time on a little tiny tape dubbing deck. I'd stuff them in in envelopes. I'd mail them all over to people in the U.S., magazines that had pages of cassette reviews, or in Europe and stuff. And there was a whole cassette culture going on, which I think is still out there too. But actually, I have my own label, Captivating Music, so I'm kind of a CEO, but not really.
Oh, cool.
I'm a CEO, yeah.
Yeah,
It wouldn't mean anything. I could make up something, the C and the E and O stand for, but it wouldn't be what people normally associate with it. But yeah, so it's just like, if I put out a CD, like with my band now, or like me solo, or the Lonesome Brothers, we put it out with the Captivating Music logo, and it gets a number and that. So yeah, so that's the extent of that label, because the Lonesome Brothers started recording a new album right before the pandemic hit, so we started recording about 4 new songs, and eventually there'll be a batch of about 12. But of course, we had to stop immediately when everything hit, and so we'll pick up on that eventually. We'll get back to it and stuff, like, so that, just write songs every day. I think I get up and write. I think I have, like, last count, 47 new songs, and 40 of them I can play beginning to end without looking at the lyric sheet.
Oh, cool.
I have no recording capabilities here, so nothing is recorded, all in my head, and it's written down on pieces of paper in manila envelopes. Each batch has their own manila envelope, and one of them will say new songs, the other one says new songs, and the other one says new songs. real technical. Yeah.
Whatever organization works for you, I think, is the best way to go.
It really works for me, because they're all right there. Each batch is in their own envelope, and each day I do a different batch, and I alternate. The next day I go to the next batch and run over those, and then every so many days they come around again, and they start over again. And that's how I keep up on all these, because I have the lyrics all written down, and the chord changes, but I like to memorize them so I can just play them, And then you realize that when you're writing new songs, you realize, it's been a year now since I played all my other songs, and they normally would play out. Geez, I hope I can remember those. The ones that I'd always play, before, when you were playing every week. Then all of a sudden you're not playing, and it's like, okay, you look at the list, and you go, I remember those, don't I? Yeah. Because you want to work on new stuff. To me, if you're a songwriter, you're working on writing songs, because that's what you do. You get up and you have ideas, and in the middle of the night, I'm thinking about changing one word in something, drive you nutty sometime, and you get up the next day and go, I gotta get that room and change that word. I gotta scribble that out. I hope I don't forget, what was that word?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's one word. It was the perfect word.
Yeah, gotta write it down immediately so you don't lose it. Yeah.
No, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yep.
Basically, you could lose it. You think, like, wait a minute, how could I possibly lose that? I knew that word.
Yeah.
It was the perfect word. How could I forget it? Is it going to ever come back to me now?
Yeah.
Then they go, what did it begin with? What letters did it begin with?
Yeah, what was the sound? Yeah.
Yes. That's not working, yeah.
That makes sense, yeah. Well, those are all of the questions I have for you. Thanks so much for talking to me today. This was great. No, not at all. This was awesome. You just heard an interview with singer-songwriter Ray Mason of the Ray Mason Band and the Lonesome Brothers. This is Mckenna Canty signing off for the New Music Alliance, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping the careers of Western New England artists who write original music.